What's up, friends? Welcome to Rogers Jr. Reviews. So today we'll be reviewing the film Soul. So Soul is this new Disney Pixar film that came out recently in 2020. It's currently on Disney Plus and will probably remain there for a while because it is a Disney film. But Soul has an average runtime of about an hour and 47 minutes. And Soul actually has multiple directors, Pete Docter as well as Kemp Powers. So both of them made this film, and let me tell you something. I don't say this often, but this is a must-watch for pretty much everybody, in my opinion. And I'll explain more as I continue, but it's definitely one of the greatest films I've ever seen in terms of content, in terms of message, in terms of just straight-up quality animation. It kind of knocks everything out of the park, and so because of that, it's like, I can end this review right now and just say, hey, if you haven't watched Soul yet, you're missing out. You're missing out a lot. And you're kind of a fool for not watching Soul yet because it's pretty insane. And I'll describe a little bit about what type of person won't enjoy Soul, because personally I think it's like 80% of people are gonna love Soul and 20% of people are gonna maybe dislike it. And I think because 80% of people like Soul, I think it would be more beneficial if I just describe who wouldn't like Soul, right? So I'll do that a little bit later in the review, but getting back to who actually stars in this film, it's a pretty star-studded cast. We got Tina Fey as 22, who's like the protagonist for the film. But we also have Jamie Foxx, David Riggs in this film. Altogether a pretty solid cast. Not that any of it really matters because it's all voice acting, but the voice acting is fantastic. It sells. The voices match the characters very well, and so it creates a world that draws you in, and let me tell you, it draws you in all right. So in terms of critic reviews, this film performed really well. I loved it. A lot of my friends loved it. In terms of critic reviews, it got a 96% Rotten Tomatoes, 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and then in terms of Google general audience reviews, 93% of people like this film, you know, so that gotta tell you something. In terms of genres, I would definitely say this is like a family film. It's definitely comedy. It's got a great sense of humor. A sense of humor that would resonate with both a slightly younger audience, but even elders. I think a lot of older individuals and older people are gonna love this film. And that's one of the caveats I have about this film. I think this film is fantastic for older people, but I don't think it hits their target market of the younger audience. I think a lot of the themes, a lot of the things in this film are gonna go over a younger audience, which is fine, right? Because, you know, all movies are for everybody kind of deal. But if you're planning to watch this with a very young person and you think that this is gonna entertain them like some other films like How to Train Your Dragon or Cars or Toy Story, I don't think this film will have the same impact on a younger audience. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the concepts and theories and things discussed in this film are very philosophical, very big picture, very spiritual. I think there's a lot of fantastic spiritual concepts in this film that I don't think a younger audience is going to resonate with or even understand. I think it's going to fly over a younger audience's head. You know, all the characters and animations are engaging, especially 22 and the souls and that whole world is going to be very engaging for a younger audience. It's fun to watch, bright colors, it's a beautiful film altogether. But I think the themes and concepts and like what to learn out of this film is really going to resonate with an older audience that's a little bit more accustomed to the way the world works, a little bit more understands, has been through the trials and tribulations of life, are much more likely to enjoy this film. But essentially, in terms of plot, in terms of what exactly this film is about, it follows the life of Terry, who's like this musician who's pretty talented, in fact very talented, and one day he ends up having a little bit of an accident and ends up dead, and his soul ends up in the soul world where souls are created and souls are sent to Earth. He has to find a way back to Earth, back to his life and back to his body and back to his dreams and goals. But honestly, I think that's a very unfair description of what the plot of this film really is, because the plot is so much more. Even though it chronicles the life of Jerry, I think half the plot is also very invested in 22 and the life of 22. I think the life of 22 is going to resonate with a lot more people than Jerry. And I don't want to explain any more of the plot because the more I explain, it's going to ruin a little bit, especially some of the secrets that make this film so fantastic. But that's essentially the baseline story, is that there's this musician who dies one day and his soul goes up the soul world and he has to find a way to get back. If that engages you at least a little bit, then I recommend checking the film out because it's so much more than that. But that's the general plot line. In terms of characters, everybody in this film is engaging. Every character in this film is beautiful in their own way, really well built, and honestly, all the characters are very believable, you know? And when I say this, you're gonna think like, whoa, this guy's kind of crazy, but the Soul world is obviously a figment of imagination. It's all just created and designed by this crew, by Pixar, right? But some of the aspects of the Soul world and the way everything works out, the way everything is designed, I wouldn't say it's accurate, but we have no way of knowing if it's true or not. So in that sense, it might as well be the truth, because I guess we'll never know, right? No one will ever go to the Soul world and come back. And two, because we'll never know, this is a fantastic way of thinking about it. The way that this film presents the Soul world and everything about it, it's a great way to think about it. Terry is very relatable and very engaging. I think you're gonna resonate with Terry if you are the type of person who has had their spark, you know? And if you haven't yet, you're not gonna resonate with what I'm saying. But if you have, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a point, I personally think it's in everyone's life, but it might just be a few people. But there's a point where you're gonna get a spark that'll change your outlook on everything in life. It'll change how honestly, for me, it was like I woke up one day and it was like this. But for other people, maybe it's a transition over time, maybe it's multiple year transition, but one day you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be thinking a little bit differently. Everything's gonna be different to you, and you're gonna have an experience very much like Terry has. The experience Terry goes through are gonna resonate with you if you're that type of person. I 100% guarantee it. Now, if you're on the flip side, if you feel like you don't have a purpose in life, if you feel like you don't really understand what's going on throughout the world, you're probably gonna be more like 22. You're gonna resonate with 22. And what you'll see this movie does fantastic is both the characters learn so much, and through their journeys, you as a viewer, as an audience member, learn so much about life, the importance of life, what exactly life is all about, and honestly how to conquer life. And I think those are lessons that every single person living on this planet can learn from. Which is why I was saying, like, I think a younger audience is going to miss a lot of the messages in this film, because you're not going to resonate, especially as a young person, you're not going to have found your spark. You know, you might think you have, most likely you probably haven't, and you're not going to resonate with some of the messaging of Terry's journey and the experiences Terry's has. Everything's going to seem a little bit foreign to you, and because of that, as much as it is a kid's film, I don't think it is a kid's film in heart. I think kids can watch it, I think kids might enjoy it, but I think at its heart, it is a film for everybody on this planet. Everybody on this planet who understands life. In terms of if the film holds your attention or not, it moves very quickly, and new pieces to this world are added relatively quickly. Things evolve, things change, characters don't really stay the same. There's always a new setting, a new difficulty, a new challenge, new characters. It's relatively fast-paced, and it'll keep you hooked the entire way through. I would argue that of all Pixar films, honestly, Pixar does such a fantastic job in their films that all of them keep me hooked all the way through. This film had me sweating at the end, you know, so that's another thing. It's like, this film will make you cry in specific parts. It'll make you sweat in specific parts. It's stunning how this film will resonate with you. You have those types of experiences, or altogether, if you're just human. In terms of what's unique about this movie, as I mentioned before, it is an extremely unique movie. It's a film that I think everyone should check out at least once, watch at least once in their lifetime. It's surprisingly very funny, and it's level of humor that isn't restricted to youth humor. It's not just fart jokes. It's really sophisticated, very smart humor that I think will resonate with the younger audience a little bit, but I think it'll definitely hit an older audience who understands a little bit more of the complex concepts. Some of these jokes are really high level and really smart. It's also very emotional and moving. And if you're at all emotional, or if you get emotional during films, expect this to be a ride. Expect this to be an adventure. This is not a film you're gonna want to be working while watching. This is not a film you're gonna be able to work on something else while watching. Yeah, this film will hook you, it'll pull you in, and it'll keep you locked in place until the very end. Now, in terms of who would like this film, as I mentioned before, I think personally like 80 to 90% of people altogether, humans, are gonna love this film. Now, I'm gonna speak into the 10% that won't like this film. Now, if you're very traditional and you have very strong ideas about what heaven and hell is like, and you have very strong ideas about how people should live their lives, if you're very stuck in your old ways and you refuse to contemplate anything new, or you refuse to consider anything new about afterlife, about souls, about life in general, then this might not be a film for you. Also, if you're somebody who hates when concepts are brought up that resonate with real life, resonate with your life, and that have implications that show you what you're doing wrong, if you hate films that do that show you what you're doing wrong, essentially, you're gonna hate the film. Because I think it'll resonate with everybody, and I think everybody can take away something from this film. So if you're very stubborn and you feel like you 100% understand everything in the world and you never want to learn and you hate that type of stuff where a movie is bringing a concept that challenge your way of life and challenge who you are, you might hate this film because the movie challenges you 100%. And beyond that, if you hate animations, if you hate films that bridge the gap between the youth and elders, then you're gonna hate this film. It's not extremely serious. It's very self-conscious, self-aware, wickedly smart, as I mentioned before. But if you need your film to be very serious, if it's like serious topics, it's a serious film kind of, if you're that type of person who needs that alignment, you're not gonna like this film because it's very serious topics, relevant topics that are handled in such a beautiful way that makes it resonate with everybody, right? But if you are not a fan of that important messages resonate with everybody kind of film, you're not gonna like this film. Other than that, if you're anybody at all and you have found a purpose of calling, or if you have found your spark, if you feel lost, if you contemplate life, Soul is a beautiful film that will, I wouldn't say clarify things, but help put everything in perspective and show you what life is all about. In terms of similar films, I would say the closest I could think of was kind of like Inside Out. Inside Out was another fantastic film that bridged the gap between youth and adults. It dealt with content that was very heavy and had real life implications and honestly very well built. How people deal with emotions, anger, sadness, joy, jealousy, how people deal with all that was referenced in Inside Out, and they did a great job of towing that line between a kid's film that's engaging with kids, but also a film that resonates with the elders and resonates with people who have been through everything, who've seen everything, who think they understand everything. So Inside Out was the closest that I thought of. It's definitely one of those Pixar deep cut films that make you rethink your life. So if you don't want to rethink your life, I would not recommend this film. So all in all, I rated this film 4 out of 4, as in OPAF, best of the best. It's definitely in my ranking of favorite movies of all time. I think it will also jump your list if you are a movie fanatic, if you like animated films whatsoever, or if you like films about real life, or films about spirituality and life and souls and what it means to be alive. You're gonna love this film, and I have a feeling it's gonna jump to, I wouldn't say top of the list, maybe. It's not as complex as some other films have been, but it's very beautifully made. So I highly recommend to pretty much anybody. And that's another beautiful thing about this film is, like I mentioned before many times, it resonates with almost everybody in this world. So because of that, I give this film a perfect score of 4 out of 4. So all in all, I highly recommend checking out this film. If you do, let me know in the comments below what you thought, if you loved it or not, and what you learned. Honestly, I'd love to know what you learned from this film. So now I'll be talking about a little bit about what we learned from this film and some of the takeaways. If you decide not to watch this film, I, again, highly recommend you watch this film because the way they lay everything out is so intricate and beautifully made that it's worth checking out 100%. Let's say you don't have time, or you just don't, you want to learn a little bit of the quick facts as to what this film has to offer, then I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. So in terms of what you learn in the end, I think there's so much to pick up on. I think there's a lot about spirituality, a lot about life that anyone can learn from. But I think the most important thing this movie shows you is what exactly is the meaning of life? What is life and what is purpose? And the movie does it so well because I think a lot of people hunt for like a job or like a relationship or something to make them feel worth it and something to make them feel like they have a purpose in life. Because if you party every day for 100 days, you're gonna get bored after a while. Same with if you just work the same dead-end job for 100 days, you're gonna get bored. If you don't feel that fulfillment, if you don't feel that purpose, that calling, that cause, but beyond that, if you don't feel that validation, that confirmation that what you're doing is worth it and what you're doing has value, you're not going to feel like you're living, right? And this film flips that and says, look, life isn't about finding that purpose or finding that thing, or as some people think, making a lot of money or finding that perfect relationship, finding that girl or guy for you. You know, life is all about living. Life is about enjoying the world literally around you, enjoying the plants, the earth, the life, energy around you, and taking the time to really savor every second on this earth, because you never know when it ends. And beyond that, once it ends, I guarantee you'll want it back. Nobody has the answer. No one can tell you what happens to your consciousness after you die. But it is a very interesting concept. But all I know for certain, right? All I know for certain is that once you die, you're gonna wish you were alive. You know, maybe your life is very difficult at this moment. Maybe you're going through a really hard time. Maybe it looks so dark that you can't find a single bit of light in this world. And we've all been there, and if you haven't, at some point you will be there. But I think the most important thing to remember through those even difficult times is, like, even through all this darkness, at least your eyes are open, right? At least you can take in the world around you. Because what happens when you die and you lose your consciousness, you won't be able to take in anything, right? And any regrets you have, those will be magnified if you die without being able to live out your life to your full extent, without being able to enjoy the life that is given to you, granted to you, right? Life is not something that is trivial. Life is not something that should be thrown away. Life is so precious, and it's essentially a gift from God, right? So in that sense, it's important for you to utilize and make the most of this gift that you have, that is life, and live it to the fullest. Live your life to the fullest and enjoy the world around you. Enjoy the life around you. And I think beyond that, there's so many other lessons to be learned from this film. But I think the most important altogether was that concept of live in the moment, enjoy every moment, savor every drop of life you have, because you never know when it ends. And once it ends, I can guarantee you'll want it back. That's all I can say. Take my word for it or not, that's up to you. But altogether, if that message resonates with you, or anything else I mentioned, or if you just altogether want something very entertaining to watch that'll hook you, that will pull you out of the world, whatever you're doing right now, it'll pull you and plop you into this stunningly created animated world, this is a fantastic film for you. So if you haven't yet, highly recommend checking it out. At least give it a shot for the first half an hour, and yeah, let me know if you resonate with it, if you loved it, if you're not. And until next time, catch you later.